All right, guys, we're going to resolve the big Ford 9 versus GM 10 bolt weight, I guess, argument or debate, whatever you want to call it. We're going to scale this, and then eventually the Ford 9, once it's loaded up and ready to go into this car, which you guys have seen before, it's JJ's Supreme, which is, covered up. I'm sure he doesn't mind me pulling up her skirt.
No, it's been beaten and abused.
So we're going to scale this, and then once he's ready to put the 9 in, all loaded up. Now, granted, this is missing some brake components, but in the real world, you would probably run drums. Well, depending on your taste, because the rotor setup, we have the rotors here, which we could put up there, and actually the hardware. So if you got rear discs.
We're actually going to put the brackets on too, because when the 9-inch gets scaled, the brackets will be on. I have to put the brackets on and then the axles in. So,
all right, so there we go. Yeah.
And I want to do a comparison with it full of fluid, like this one's full of fluid.
Yeah.
I want to do it weight to weight, know what the actual difference is that we added to the ass end of the car.
So then that'll be the debate. For me, I'm not going to lie, I actually am a fan of the S60, and what I was told by somebody who works for Heights is that the S60 has become popular because you no longer need case spreaders to do the gear swaps and stuff like that. They're built into it. So back in the day, the Dana 60 was the way to go if you were putting a lot of power down, but not everybody knows how to work on them nowadays.
And actually, that is very true. A friend of mine has I think it's a 70 CUDA, and when he was looking to replace the 8 3/4 because he had broke 3 of them in a row, I told him to buy a 9, and he checked into it. He went to an S60 and ran it for 4 seasons without any problems. Unfortunately, he decided to buy a Daytona, a lighter, and a better car, so now all that car does is sit. He did. The S60 is a very viable, very popular option, but I like the 9-inch. That's what I decided to go with.
And for like the reliability of parts availability, the 9 is kind of still the way to go. The S60, especially if you're buying it from like Strange, it's probably going to have some specific components. It's not like a Mark Williams where you're stuck buying everything they make for it because they're got weird splines and stuff like that. I know that that's a thing with the Mark Williams rears, but I think the S60, I believe, has a little less drag than the 9, but that's obviously it also depends on what you're going to be doing with it. But either way, we're going to get this ready. We're going to scale it, and then we'll have to follow it up, obviously, at some point. But we'll check back in a few seconds. All right, this took a few tries just to get it right because we're only using 3 of the 4 scales, and we actually had to hook up a scale as a dead scale because these are corner scales for a race car, but you could still use them to scale. So we're at about 181 with just the backing plates and the anchor mounts for the caliper stuff. So we're going to add the other stuff to the equation here in a bit, and then it'll probably bulk it up. I'm going to guess at least 195. That's my guess.
Probably 210.
So
them rotors are heavy.
So we'll find out here in a minute. Wow, I was way off. I said 195. So the rear with all the brake components, the rotors alone were, what did you say, 29 pounds?
I think they were, yeah, something like that. 25.
25 pounds. So that tells you how heavy the rotors are. And actually now, for all intents and purposes, I actually would like to weigh all of my rear drum setup stuff on the scale at home when because I'm going to have to put all my brake hardware on this rear. This is what's going to end up going on my car. So I'd be real curious because that's always been a debate. You tell people that a drum brake setup is lighter, and the typical ignorant person will say that's bull crap. But rotors are fairly stout, and then you got your mounting anchors and your caliper anchors and whatnot, and then your calipers and the pads. We got everything set up, so you get an idea of how much actual weight you're going to add with a disc brake setup, which is interesting.
Just a caveat: those are not stock rotors; those are drilled and slotted. I think they're eBay or Amazon specials. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't spend big dollars for the stock ones. But everything, if you've watched the videos, you know this is Blazer, GM, I think it's 98 to 02 or 03, Blazer, rear wheel disc brakes, S10 if it's the 4-door, and there's a couple. There's a Great Link, it's actually Nasty Z28, rear Blazer conversion is the thing. You can Google it and it'll come right up and find it. It's a great article. It's actually for putting them on Camaros. So you have to change it a little bit for the A bodies because they talk about putting one rotor or caliper on one side and one caliper on the other because the Trans Ams have the shocks in the way or something. But it's actually great, and I like it because it's all factory parts. I can go to AutoZone, Idiotville, anywhere and buy parts if I'm at the racetrack. That's why I like this instead of a conversion kit. But I am actually looking at buying better brakes. So.
And that's, again, that's a big part of if you're going to be doing any form of racing at any given point for a length amount of time, buying parts that you can get stuff for. Like earlier we mentioned with the strange rears, you know, the benefit of a Ford 9, if you're actually using a Ford 9, which might be like narrowed or something, you could probably still find bearings at the Napa for it or something if something gave out at the track. So there's something to be said about still running stuff that is much like this. I think for this though, you got different bearing ends because of the.
It's a big Ford bearing end.
Yeah, so
because I did the 33 axle spline in it, I had to go to a bigger axle. I had to go to the bigger bearing, so I had to go to the bigger ends, and I had to have these ends welded on.
And those are Ford ends, right?
They're actually, yes, they're Ford bearing ends, but they're still GM brake ends.
Okay.
Just like the 9-inch I bought now, they're Ford bearing ends, but they take the stock GM brake. You just have to bore the center of the brake. Well, this one,
the backing pad, the
I had to have this bored out because if you look how close it is to the holes to fit over the bearing, and these barely fit. And then, like I said in the video, I could have taken it to my buddy, but I got bored and went with the die grinder.
Hey, if it works, it works.
It works. It's not pretty, and nobody's ever going to see it. But that is, I mean, cheap, easy, make it work. Now we know what the weight of this one is. I don't know, did you ever...
We didn't do the close-up. 224. It's hovering a hair, but
yeah,
you know what? Within a pound is negligible.
I also just threw this and that off. So 228, I think, is where we started. So...
Yeah, so now you guys got an idea when you go over, and this is definitely going to get followed up. So
yeah, when I get mine together, when my back gets a little better, because that was the delay he's talking about. I threw my back out. I've been laying on my couch for 4 weeks. I'm finally moving a little bit, but as you notice, I'm not lifting anything heavy. That's what he's for.
Nah, big dog's here, so we're good.
Yep.
We're good. But all right, we're done with this. Share, like, subscribe, and stay tuned because once he is ready to put the Ford, the Moser 9 for the GMA body in this car, we're going to be able to scale it and see the difference. Now, he does have an aluminum center section. It isn't a stock Ford housing or the cast iron third member. So, again, there is an argument that the Ford 9 is heavier, but also it will be heavier if you're using the cast iron center and the stock rear end housing. So I think with something like for Moser, they have this all in mind already. So with the aluminum center section and with the housing material, they know what's going to be the lightest, strongest material they can make that housing from that will deliver. I think it's a realistic comparison for somebody doing an upgrade is the way I see it. So this is perfect. Now we technically could measure drag. You got an 1/pound torque wrench? That would be interesting.
That I do not.
So I can do that, and we'll actually compare that because you can put an 1/pound torque wrench and just see how much drag you're going to have. Now this is going to come down to the setup also on the rear end. But if you're turning the yoke with an 1/pound torque wrench and you put wheels on it, you get a more accurate way to measure your drag at least because you're going to have the mass of the wheels, the drag of the brakes, the drag of the gear, everything as it would be sit in the car. So actually that actually is a good point to try to do because people like to argue the drag between like the 10 bolt is supposed to be probably the best light GM rear end you can get. Obviously, you go down to 7.5. You talk to guys that do grudge racing, they grenade them left and right because they didn't want to upgrade.
I made that setup part last night. I could not believe how tiny that rear that 7.5 spring gear is. I'm like, where's the rest of it? I've been dealing with this 8.5 for so long, and the 8.5 to a 12 is only like 1/4 of an inch. They're really not that much different. You know, I did a lot of reading, and there is an article if you can find it, and I cannot name you the year, date. It's an old hot rod magazine. It's called the 10 Bolt Tango, and we're standing in my car club. I actually bathroom down there. Everybody used to do it. Have the magazines. I read the article many a times. The guy was running 8 seconds with a 10 bolt, but he said a lot of things you gotta do is like take the lash out of it before you set the trans brake, you know, good parts, and run it. So,
you know, and that's in the Oldsmobile world. You guys know probably Brian Trick. He's the rear end guy out in the East Coast, and he's been hammering on an 8.5 with a. I think at the point that he became kind of well known for that was with a 507. He had in a full weight Supreme. I think it was a Supreme or an S. I think it was an S.
I honestly don't know. I can't keep track.
Yeah, it's hard. But either way, that would be a good point to just try to see what the drag difference would be. And clearly the setup will change. But if you want to argue the drag point, then we can, you know, I can have this thing on jack stands, put wheels on it, prop it up, grab my inch-pound torque wrench, and we can watch that needle move around and see how much force it actually takes to turn that yoke. And obviously you can't just get it to move because there's always that. I'm getting too much into it now. I'll get into it for that video. We're done. This is taking too long. Share, like, subscribe. Bye.
All right, guys. We're out here to see what the weight difference is. Now, I actually already know how much less it weighs, but there is no fluid in it versus the 10 bolt we scaled. But like Copper said, the aluminum center section, which you can't really see right there, but there's not been enough other information on it. That makes a big difference. But we got it, the 3 scales. We don't have the fluid in it yet, but as of right now, it weighs 187 pounds for the 9-inch, and the 8.5 we took out weighed 228 pounds. So I'm actually losing weight, and the brackets are all on, everything's on it. So it's not like we're just trying to cheat the system here. We got 3 quarts of fluid here. Oops, sorry, Josh. We'll put on this other scale, which brings us up to 193, 194 pounds. So right now, this is over 30 pounds lighter than my old rear end by comparison. Or was that 100? Was it 128 with the disc brakes and everything? No, we added the disc brakes after that. So it was 128 just for the rear end. So there you guys go. Answer the question. This is pretty much set up to go. I gotta make a bracket for the brake line, which I talked about, but that was something the other end didn't have. And but there it is. This one's lighter. Who would have thought? I would have figured it would have been heavier. So talk to you all later.